everybody, Artish and Finesse. It is Friday night. The Penguins have just been swept out of the Stanley Cup playoffs by the Boston Bruins. And Finesse, there's not a lot to say. We lost to a better team.
Yeah, no question. I think the best way to put it is that the Bruins got hot defensively in the same way that a team gets hot offensively. And the Penguins could have played this game until Monday afternoon and probably wouldn't have gotten a goal. It was just the Bruins were that tight defensively. There was no room. I don't want to take credit away from Rask because the dude gave up 2 goals in 4 games, but he didn't have a single memorable stop. And the Penguins' chances, I don't think I would grade the best chance the Penguins had tonight as anything better than like a B+ at best, the Malkin thing at the end. All credit to the Bruins. They were better. And the way that you have to win in the playoffs today, the Bruins were better. They deserve to win.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to point the finger at the state of the NHL. I mean, this kind of defensive excellence and just clogging up passing and shooting lanes is what's rewarded in today's NHL. And it's to their credit that they mastered that. They did it. I kind of feel, I want to get your take on this. There's been some talk, and we've talked about how the Penguins maybe played a little bit entitled. Like they weren't willing to get dirty and do what was necessary to win. I'm also sensing among the fan base a sense of entitlement, and everybody's sort of pointing the finger, and I'm sure it's going to be a crazy 24 hours on Twitter about what changes need to be made, what was wrong. You got to give credit where it's due. The Bruins were better. It's not necessarily a situation where you have to completely revamp the Penguins roster, fire everybody. I mean, maybe some of that happens, but the way this series unfolded, it could have been a different series. It could have been a very different series. It could be 2-2 right now. These teams are very, very close. Let's not overreact. Let's look at the fact that the Penguins scored 2 goals in 14 periods. And in one game, they had no fewer than 53 shots. That's not a bad output. That's actually a great output. They just couldn't score on this team. They just couldn't get it done. And it's no more and no less than that.
Well, the question, though, in response to that would be, you mentioned it like sort of in the way the NHL is right now, and clearly it's gotten more defensive since the end of the lockout. That's not how the Penguins play. So if it's that obvious that that's sort of the direction we're in now, and those are the teams that are thriving. And I mean, Chicago's a good offensive team, and Boston's a good offensive team too, but they're both way better than the Penguins defensively. You got to ask, like, is this system that we play the right system? Is Dan Bilesma the right coach to excel in the playoffs in the way that you have to win playoff games?
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I'll tell you this. I saw a stat today that Mike Babcock, who I think we all look at as like the premier sort of long-running coach in the league, a guy that's been with his team a long time and excels. He has a worse record in the last 70 playoff games than Dan Bilesma does since he became coach of the Penguins. So a lot of this is just perception, expectation. Dan Bilesma has not failed in the playoffs.
They also haven't won the Stanley Cup.
Well, they won it in 2008. But
right. I'm not advocating firing Bilesma, but I don't think it's like – I think it's really worth asking the question based on the post that I put up yesterday. Like, coaches win early. They don't win often. And it doesn't mean they're a bad coach. I'm not saying that Bilesma's a bad coach. I'm not saying he didn't do a great job. I'm not saying he didn't deserve the Jack Adams or whatever he won 2 years ago. But they just, for whatever weird reason in the NHL, coaches tend to have a shelf life. And I don't think the roster needs a ton of overhaul. I think there's definitely stuff that needs to happen and we can get to it, but it's easy to change the coach. So
yeah, I'm not advocating not firing him. I'm just saying you need to really analyze this without bias and without preconceptions. And I think it's easy in the heat of the moment when you're feeling all these emotions, and after we just got absolutely run out of the playoffs by this team, to have knee-jerk responses and to not analyze this properly. I mean, to your point about longevity with coaches, Claude Julien, I think, is in his fifth year now, maybe his sixth year.
No, he's like going in his, I think maybe even his seventh.
Yeah, I mean, this guy.
But okay, that's fine. But he just completely outcoached Bilesman, right?
Well, I mean, I think that's really the hard question. I don't know that it's as easy as that. I don't think we can be glib about this. Granted, we got swept, but when you scored 2 goals and Sidney Crosby has 0 points and Evgeny Malkin has 0 points and Chris Letang has 0 points and James Neal has 0 points, how is that on the coach? That's the question I think we really need to ask.
Well, okay, but
the right
those guys didn't have points, and Shiro's not off the hook either for this. But what did the Penguins do at any point to create more chances? What they did do, and what I'll give Bilesman credit for, is they tightened up defensively a lot and were really, really good defensively the last 2 games, I thought. But they didn't make any changes to get more chances. So
how many chances could we have had in Game 3?
But okay, in my mind, there's a difference between like what goes down on the scoring sheet as a chance and a chance that's actually going to be a goal. And a chance, if you count a chance as like Crosby coming down the left wing, basically getting pushed wide at the bottom of the circle and shooting it, that maybe goes down on the score sheet as a chance, but that's not real. I mean, I can't remember a single like truly clean look the Penguins had at the net in 4 games in this series. I don't remember.
They had a lot. In Game 3, they had a lot. They hit a lot of posts. They had a lot of great bursts, and they just couldn't score. And I don't. And that, to me, was the turning point in the series. We shouldn't have been at that point because of how horribly we played in the first 2 games. But we didn't come through when we needed to in Game 3, in my view. And I'm not saying that you're wrong about Bilesman being outcoached. I just think that it's too easy. That's just what we do in hockey. Team loses, you fire the coach. It's too easy. Maybe that'll help. I don't know. I'm just raising these points because I just feel like there's a lot more to it than that.
All right. Well, then the other huge sort of indictment, and this isn't just Bilesma, this is the whole team and sort of organization and the whole, is like what the hell happens in these games when we melt down, like in Game 2? To me, that is inexcusable. Like that is something that you can't find any explanation for it. Like,
yeah, I agree.
Like that, if you want to indict Bilesma, forget the goal stuff. Forget the fact that he didn't make adjustments, or he did make adjustments, or whatever. That we have performances in the playoffs like Game 2 and the Flyers series last year, and blowing a 3-1 series lead before. Like, there's a question about this team's mentality too. And that is not easy to change with scheming. And it's very difficult for the same coach to change a team's mentality if that mentality is bad. And it may not be his fault that it got to this point, but you have to ask whether he's the guy to get it out of this point.
Oh, they're going to be asking that question. I don't have any doubt that question is being asked right now. Let's talk just a little bit. We're talking in generalities. Let's talk a little bit about this game. I think our goalie deserved better.
Vokun was great. And if we're making like rash decisions about next year, the only totally obvious decision to me is get rid of Fleury, whatever it takes. Find a way to get rid of him. Clear that $5 million. If it means that Mario and Burke will have to write a check, they got to write a check. Right?
There are 2 things.
It's not like Vokun's a bad option. Vokun could be your technical number 1 goalie. Maybe you go into next year, play him 50 games, play somebody else 32 games.
Yeah, I mean, 2 things I was very sure about today, and one is that Fleury is gone, and the other was that we were just not going to score a goal. I mean, I've never been more confident that we weren't going to score a goal. At that last minute, that last Fleury, no pun intended, that last, all that action around the net where all the Bruins were falling all over the place and the Penguins had the puck and they actually looked like for a minute they could have a chance to tie the game. We saw how brilliant Malkin is in terms of his dominance on the puck, but if you had a guy like a Lemieux or a lot of different players, I think in the league that have a little bit of more of an assassin in them when it comes to shooting the puck, that puck's in the net. Like Malkin just could not find the handle.
He's not he doesn't finish as much as he should for as great of a player as he is. Like he needs to put it under the crossbar a little more often, I think. Yeah. But that's sort of picking around the edges, I guess. But I didn't think we were going to score in that last flurry. Like Boston gets all the credit in the world. They didn't make a single defensive mistake the whole series. And even with the small ones that they did make, like tonight someone blew a tire off a turnover, and it was Tyler Kennedy passing a bouncing puck to Matt Cook. Like, that's a hot team defensively. They just got hot. And, nothing the Penguins were going to do was really going to score on this team unless there was some dramatic change that we just didn't see.
Yeah, this game showed that, great defensive structure trumps great offense any day of the week. Sid had the most bursts that he's had by far this series. He was looking to create. He was explosive. But every time he gained the zone, there were 5 guys all around him.
I know.
There was nothing he could do. I mean, it was amazing. It was like the closest thing to it. There are 2 things that come to mind. One was, playing the Wings in the Stanley Cup Final. They were like that at times, just suffocating. And the second was, the mid-'90s New Jersey Devils. That's what this was like.
Yeah.
You have no chance against that.
It's frustrating that happened. To me, and that's why, to me, the biggest disappointment in this series is the power play. It was a non-existent power play. There was it was not dangerous at all. I rarely felt that we ever got anything good out of the power play. And the Bruins have a great penalty kill, so we're going to sit here and credit the Penguins' penalty kill for being all good, and then say the Penguins' power. We can't not give credit to the Bruins' penalty kill for giving it to the Penguins' penalty kill. Yeah, but over 15 on the power play, that's awful. It's just awful.
And the Bruins, I think, were 0 for 11. There was not a single power play goal scored the whole series. But the difference is we depend on that, and they clearly don't.
Well, it's not that we depend on it. It's that when a team is just so uncompromising 5-on-5 like the Bruins are and give you nothing, you have to score.
We depend on it.
Well, in this series we did. We didn't. Yeah. I'm saying in this series we definitely depended on it.
How perfect was it that the lone goal in the game was really scored by Jerome McGinley off of his stick?
Did it hit his stick? I wasn't totally sure.
Oh, it hit his stick.
It did?
Bo Kuhn wasn't letting anything clean go by him. That was deflected right off of McGinley's blade. Just amazing.
Yeah. I just the coverage on that play bothered me a little more than the hitting the stick aspect of it. Bennett, it was so obvious that Marchand was going to stop up. I don't know why Bennett didn't stick with him a little bit better. He kind of went 6 feet past him, but that's a guy who's been in the playoffs 6 years against a guy who's been in the playoffs 4 games. So
I'm kind of glad that this ended because the way the Bruins are playing right now, there's just no way that you're going to win 4 in a row against that team. They're just too solid defensively right now.
It would have taken some sort of dramatic shift, to even score. I want to swear, but I probably have family listening. It would have taken a dramatic shift to score a single goal.
What does this mean for the legacy of this team and its great players?
It's certainly not a good thing. I'm not. It goes in the negative column.
If they win a Stanley Cup in the next couple of years, it's buried in the long run.
It's sort of the first one in the last of the 4 most recent disappointments where there's absolutely no excuse. So there's not much of an excuse for the Flyers series last year, although you could kind of blame it on Fleury melting down and Sid not being back 100% from the concussion. Canadian series, everyone kind of threw it away as cup hangover, we'll be back. Tampa series, obviously, we weren't winning the cup that year anyway, so it doesn't matter. No excuse. It's bad. It's really bad. But, it's redeemable. They're 26-25 or 27-26 or something, so it's completely redeemable.
Well, that's what we can't lose sight of, and that's what I'm talking about with people being so reactionary after a series like this. It's just such a blip on the historical landscape. You can't go trading Malcolm and Crosby after something like this happens. They're no less great. They were just, you saw the team triumph over the individual this series. That's what you saw. I mean, we got to do something to be able to match up with this kind of a team better.
And hockey's like the one sport where you have really big stars that carry the league, but they actually have less impact on a game than stars in any other sport. So and I think that's part of why you see this sort of attitude on NBC Sports or in general, a lot of other sports pump up their stars. In the NHL, it's once you hit the top, everyone tries to bring you down a lot. And I think it's because it's very difficult for one individual other than a goalie to have this type of impact on a game. Then it's just much harder in hockey than in basketball or football where you can be the quarterback or something,
Right, and it's a bizarre culture that lends itself to things like Ed Olczyk and Pierre Maguire saying that it wasn't a penalty when Payet completely blindsided Crosby in the first period. That's the definition of
it was the most obvious interference penalty I've ever seen in my entire life. I texted you and I said, if they have an interference university, they're teaching this at orientation. Right. This is going on the orientation video of how to call interference. It was ridiculous. And for them to say it was an accident, that was even worse than the ref looking at it and not blowing the whistle. Well,
these refs are empowered by this culture, that says, Sidney Crosby, all the stars before you had to endure this, and now you've got to endure it too. Well, that's all well and good, but if somebody tackles you away from the puck, it's a penalty. Right. I don't care what he has to endure. Just call it by the book. It's not that hard.
All right, I'm just gonna flip through my notes real quick from the game. I have stuff in order. We had that too many men penalty in the first period, and Tyler Kennedy went to go serve it. I'm really gonna miss Tyler Kennedy next year as the designated bench minor penalty server. He's really good at it. I think that's maybe the best thing.
I think we all will. And there's nothing like a Tyler Kennedy performance like the one here in Game 4 to make you forget that you were campaigning for Tyler Kennedy to play in Game 4.
Yeah, it's true. He wasn't great, but what do you expect? He was better than Joe Vitale.
Yeah, there were some positives that we should probably talk about. I thought Derek Englund really acquitted himself well. We've given him a lot of crap over the years about not being a playoff player, and he might have proved us wrong this playoff year. He played well.
Yeah, I thought he was good. I thought he was really good. I never fully agreed with the move, and I mean, even though he was good,
him over Dupre,
yeah, it doesn't make it the right move because the thing that Dupre could do maybe is contribute a little more offense.
Yeah, I agree completely.
So it doesn't make it the right move, but it does mean that Englund played well.
Yeah, I didn't find myself shouting at the television when Englund was on the ice all the time. Another positive is, it was great for Bo Bennett to get this experience, and I just think he's a really, really promising player, and there's nothing that I saw in the playoffs to make me think otherwise.
Yeah, I am very impressed with Bo Bennett, and what I hope the Penguins do with him next year is just give him a chance to play for a long time on one of the top two lines.
Yeah,
Bilesma, he's a little quick sometimes to bump a guy who needs first line type of minutes to the fourth line. And I just, we got to have some like new blood, youthful energy type attitude to the team. There's no, it doesn't work to have like a bunch of 36-year-old all-stars. It's not the right thing in the playoffs. You have to have like a little bit of, wide-eyed enthusiasm from young guys.
Yeah, and we talked about that way back in our season preview about how this team was going to need some young guys to surprise and be contributors in the playoffs. And I don't think that they got that chance. And, we see what happened. I think there's no question Iginla's gone. Morrow's likely gone.
Why would you keep Morrow? I mean, Morrow sucked.
I can't envision any scenario where those guys stick
Look,
around.
As soon as they got the puck in their own zone, the other team's defenseman pinched up on them every single time. And this is not just this series. This is the first and second series too, because they couldn't get the red line to even avoid an icing. Right. Morrow was the worst player on the team in getting the puck out of his own zone. And I do think Iginla was not impressive in this series, but I do think there's a lot to question about whether he was utilized properly. I'm not sure that he was. Sutter, Morrow, Iginla as a line, not good. Iginla and Morrow on the same line is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's a hard point to argue.
Those guys are both gone for sure. No question.
The other question that we have to ask ourselves, and we also talked about this all year long, the Penguins are incredibly top-heavy on defense, more top-heavy on defense, much more top-heavy than they are on offense. Admittedly, Orpik, Martin, and Letang are the only defensemen that Bilesman wants to play big minutes. And I think we saw that doesn't work. You can't one issue was a constant rotation of partners for these guys. They're never playing with the same partner because there's three of them. There's an odd number. And you've got to work in these other guys. And it's not to say that Englund and Doug Murray didn't play well when they played, because I think they did. I mean,
I thought Douglas Murray was really good in this series.
Yeah, particularly the last two games. I mean, they were in shutdown mode. They were great. But the minutes are so lopsided, inevitably your top three guys are not going to be as effective in a series that goes to multiple overtimes. And, as you get deeper into the playoffs, those guys have to lose effectiveness because they're playing so many minutes.
And one of the big problems is that with Letang a free agent after next season, it's only going to get more top-heavy salary-wise. Because right now, it's actually the salaries are not prohibitive for the defense at all.
Right.
But when Letang comes up, it's going to get a lot different from a salary perspective.
And the cap is going down. So there are a lot of big decisions to be made.
And that's why, just play Simone Dupré next year from the first game and just play him 17 minutes
just ride or die with him.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
If he has a bad game, play him in the next game. If he has two bad games in a row, play him in the game after that. It doesn't really matter, especially the Penguins this season. We're not going to miss the playoffs. You hope. I mean, knock on wood. But this year, especially, there was never a danger of missing the playoffs. Just play these guys and just ride with it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be against re-signing Douglas Murray, though, to be honest. I actually thought of the three guys, Jokinen signed, but of the other two guys, Morrow and Iginla, Murray I wouldn't be totally against bringing back.
I never thought that Douglas Murray looked outmatched in the playoffs, and I think the concern was he's so slow afoot.
The Islanders series, he was a little outmatched. This series, he was great. If we could have scored goals, he would have been one of our best players in this series.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So I think, as a bottom pairing defenseman, you could do a hell of a lot worse than that guy.
Another question that I have coming out of the playoffs is if you buy the Discover credit card because it has late payment forgiveness, what is that really saying about your life? That you need late payment forgiveness? You are planning to miss all of your credit card payments and pay, call somebody up and just talk to them and say, hey, I'm late. And they're like, it's fine, no worries, no big deal.
I don't want to say that this inquiry seems a little bit out of left field. But
how many times do you have to see these commercials?
I'm not paying attention to the commercials. I want to say one more thing to you about our team. I thought it was very clear that Chris Kunitz was hurt. and he was a big disappointment in the series. And I think it's a question about what happens with him going forward. What does he have, 1 year left on his deal?
Yeah, I got Cap Geek up. Yeah, he signed through next season.
I mean, that guy, when he's going, is such a huge bargain. And for much of the season, such a huge bargain. But in this series, I mean, granted, he had one of the 2 goals that we scored, but he was largely invisible. And there were so many times tonight where you're just wondering, where the hell is anybody in front of our net? We had nobody in front of the net, ever. It was totally perimeter play by the Penguins. And you count on Kunitz to be the guy that gets his nose dirty.
At least Steve McIntyre is signed through next season.
Well, that's big.
The only 2 untouchable players for me, like legitimately don't even call it a talk about it untouchable, are Crosby, and can you guess the other one?
Well, it's got to be somebody under contract. I think that James Neal is a possibility, but I just thought he was so bad this year.
Yeah, he wasn't. Really he wasn't good this series, but he's a legitimate first line winger. So, and he's got a reasonable deal for a first line winger. So that's the guy. Like, I'm not saying trade Malkin. I'm not saying trade Letang, but the only 2 guys that I think you don't consider, like, it would be irresponsible for the Penguins to not consider every option. The only 2 guys that I think are sort of not in that discussion would be Crosby and Neal.
All right, but was Neal hurt this series? I mean, I know he's been hurt, but he played so well against Ottawa. What happened to him this series? I mean,
maybe he's just not a guy. He's a guy that needs a little bit of space. Maybe.
Yeah.
Couldn't get any room. Couldn't get any room out there.
All right, Mr. Untouchable. Could have used Marian Hossa this series. I'll tell you that.
Well, we tried. That's not the Pens' fault. He made a decision.
No, I know. I'll never quite get over that.
I thought Sutter was pretty good tonight. I mean, he doesn't score, obviously, but I thought he was actually like a decent player.
Yeah, he was all right. I mean, this is a whole other podcast. We're going to really have to get into this, the different options for the offseason. It's just sort of overwhelming to think about. All the possibilities and all the contingencies, and it's quite a bit to analyze there, isn't there?
There's a lot. It's going to be a weird off season.
If there's a coaching change, does it happen quickly or does it happen after a number of weeks?
Well, I think it would happen. It would have to happen quickly, I think. And I think it would have to come from ownership. I think Shiro likes Bilesma, but I just wonder if the Pens are fighting a losing battle in trying to play a style that doesn't seem to be the style that's going to win out right now. And I mean, I want the league to be in the style that the Penguins play. It's better. It's more exciting. Like, this was an exciting game because of the stakes, but if this game happens in November, it's really boring.
Yeah.
So you want the Penguins to play the way that they do, but you got to question whether that's the winning strategy. And I don't want them to, to die on the hill being the team that tries to play the 2005, 2006 post-lockout Jonathan Cheechoo scoring 50 goals style when we're now in this world where the LA Kings win the cup winning every game 1-0 or 2-1.
I also question, though, and I guess I'm not enough of an X's and O's guys to really understand this, but here's what I do know. Bilesma has his system, right, that he supposedly will not deviate from. How hard is it, if you're Dan Bilesma, to just change things on the fly? And I think we both know where I'm going with this. In '92, when the Penguins went down 3-1 to the Capitals, they just decided, hey, we're going to play a left-wing lock. We're going to essentially play a trap. We're going to change our style completely in the middle of the series that we're losing. And then they come back and win the series. Why is it coach-dependent? on what kind of style you're going to play. Like, can't you just play whatever style you decide to play? I realize that practice makes perfect and all that, but let's not overplay this system notion. I mean, you can change this just because it's Dan Bilesman doesn't mean he can't change.
Right.
Maybe he won't change. In which case, maybe you got to make a switch.
But it's unclear that he hasn't had to. So it's not, and he certainly hasn't yet. So it's not clear that he's capable of it, of doing something different.
Well, that's pretty limited capability if he can't say, hey, let's play a left wing lock or whatever. I mean, none of this is brain surgery.
Yeah, but I mean, there's coaches who are great defensive coaches who are limited in their capability in that they can't coach offense.
Yeah. Yeah, we all have our limitations, to be sure. I don't know. I just don't know the answer in that regard. I'm more comfortable talking about personnel, but yeah, it's something that has to be examined.
What do you think happens with Malkin and Letang? They're both up after next season. So, this similar situation with Jordan Staal this past year. Pence could have had Jordan Staal this year if we wanted him. He was still under contract with us, but decided to trade him because we didn't think we could re-sign him. Does something like that happen with Malkin or Letang? Do we trade him? Do we just ride it out? Do we try to extend both of them? What happens?
That's a great question. And I'm not prepared to give an answer. I would be curious at this stage to know what the market is for both guys. Just want to know what the market is. I want to make an informed decision.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I don't think you really can do that until you know what the market is.
But there was a lot of talk a few months ago, or I guess after the lockout ended, that Malkin was going to be like the first $10 million player. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think he's getting more than Sid. I think he could get the same. I don't think he's getting more.
Listen, we can have a lot of second-line centers who score 0 points in a playoff series. I know that is not a very nuanced view of what our situation is, but it's the reality. You just we gotta know what the options are to make this an efficient team in the playoffs. And they're not that. They're an explosive team. They're an enigmatic team. They could win, they could lose. We have no idea what they're going to do. I think we need a more predictable situation with the Pittsburgh Penguins. You just don't know what they're going to do. And that's on a lot of it's on the personnel, which is very inconsistent in the postseason. You just have to explore the options, I think.
Right. And I think one of the factors with the personnel is and we talked about this today online, and this may be sort of a media-driven narrative, but when the Penguins got Iginla and Morrow, there was ideas about, look at the leadership it brings to the locker room, look at all this. But I'm sitting there thinking, Crosby and Malkin have been in the league for 7-8 years now. They don't, we don't really need veteran infusion of leadership in the locker room. We needed it with Bill Guerin in 2009.
Right.
We shouldn't be bringing in guys because of leadership needs.
Let's bring in guys because of awesomeness.
Right. Let's bring in guys who are just good players, know? A couple things on Twitter. Just tuned in, so may have missed this. Other than Fleury, is there anyone else to consider dumping, not re-signing, extending? Kennedy's gone. He's not coming back.
Yeah, Kennedy's gone, and a lot of these decisions
Cook is gone.
They're not going to be made for us. I mean, you obviously want to keep a Matt Cook. He's a really good playoff player. He's one of our better players in this series, but you're not going to be able to keep him. It's questionable whether we can keep Dupuis. I know we're going to try.
I'd like to keep him. Apparently, he was crying after the game. That's what some of the reports are from the guys.
I'm sure he's crying into his thick beard.
Yeah. Sup Cussy says, bottom line, no one stepped up in 4 games. Sid Gino, most accountable. The guys like Dupuis, Kunitz, and Ginla did 0. That's true.
Yeah, it is true.
I was thinking about this during the game. Earlier in the second round, when the Blackhawks went down 3-1 to the Red Wings, Tays had no goals up to that point.
Yeah.
And his team sort of lifted him and kept him going. And like now his legacy, he's 24. It's ridiculous to talk about legacy, same way it is about Crosby Malkin. But, he's not going to be stained by that slow start because the other guys lifted him up. And so, Crosby Malkin didn't score. They are accountable, but that goes away if other guys step up. And nobody else stepped up.
Yeah, and it could still go away. But, this game tonight and this series in general, it's just a different game now. It's not like, in the early 90s when Lemieux could just put the team on his back. There was nothing Crosby could do tonight. They suffocated him. What was he supposed to do?
Right. It didn't look like they were trying to score against Crosby's line at all. I have a feeling that Crosby, statistically had a good game.
It was like soccer out there.
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying, but that goes back to Bilesma, and I'll tie this into Don, who asked, should Disco be gone? If not, what do you think he's shown the last 4 playoffs to justify keeping his job? The question is, I don't think you judge necessarily based on those playoffs. Maybe you sort of do, but it's not about the last 4, it's about the next 4. And if the league's going in a defensive direction, you just got to wonder if he's the guy to coach the Pens in a scenario where they could win those type of games consistently and play that way consistently.
Bring back Kevin Constantine, I guess. How depressing.
I went to by the way, the Penguins tonight, plus 18 in Corsi.
Yeah, of course they were.
Crosby, plus 14. I mean, yeah, he had the puck. Their line had the puck the whole game. The Bruins were fine to let them stay to the outside and not get any good scoring chances. But what I was going to say is I did a hockey camp when I was younger with Kevin Constantine. He was dynamic as an instructor. Really just a really great hockey mind. And his whole thing was actually a lot of what you were seeing with the Bruins tonight. His whole coaching strategy was you break the ice down and every single play down into mini 2-on-1s. And so even on breakaways, or not on breakaways, on breakouts, it's you want it everywhere on the ice. It's puck support. You have a 2-on-1. If it's in the corner, you have a 2-on-1. If you're out at the blue line, it's a 2-on-1. So, it was slicing everything up into little pockets. I like Kevin Constantine. He was a good coach.
I would say he was a great coach because he took a team that was Jaromir Jagr, Yuri Yurdina, Kip Miller, and basically 19 scrubs and turned them into a competitive team. Really good coach.
Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot of soul searching to be done, and a lot of people have a lot of hard questions to ask themselves.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think we should take a week off, and then we should come back with an off season. What do we do in the off season podcast?
Including
collect ourselves.
Ray Shiro. He's got to ask himself some tough questions about his strategies because you love him as a GM because he's aggressive and he's decisive, but you could go back to maybe his biggest mistake of all, which was, in hindsight, probably letting Rob Scuderi go because they would have been a nice guy to have in that Montreal series in 2010.
I guess. That's tough. It's tough to criticize the guy. I mean, it's too easy after we just praised him top to bottom for everything he did this year, turn around and point the finger at him for being all wrong. That just means we're all wrong.
Well, we might be. It's a result-based business. Yeah. I think we're feeling a little bit like the Caps right now.
Sad times, but I'm just glad it's behind us. I'm glad that this isn't going to be prolonged, quite honestly.
It would have been tough to endure this for another game or two and then lose because it's really tense.
Yeah. Congratulations to the Bruins. I mean,
good team.
Really very impressive performance.
Oh, last thing I wanted to mention and it's about that topic, is there's a lot of people who feel like, the team that beat you should root for that team because then if they win, it means you may be the second best team.
It's ridiculous.
Could
it's the
those
dumbest
people,
thing I've ever heard.
Could people who think that possibly be real sports fans? Like, I will not. First of all, I probably won't even watch the finals because I'm just not going to. I'm so upset.
Yeah.
But like to watch the finals and root for the Bruins, are you insane? Like, what kind of person do you think I am that I would root for the Bruins?
That is the most nonsensical thing I've ever heard.
Yeah. I mean, I'll probably root for Chicago.
Bruins, but I hate you and I'm never rooting for you.
Oh, absolutely not. So, I don't know. It's a disappointing way to end the season for sure. I don't think that anybody thought it would end this way. I mean, it was always possible to lose in the conference finals. There's no shame in that, but you don't want to get swept. It's embarrassing, and there's a lot of people with a lot of questions to answer.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go.
Yes,
and,
it's time.
We're not done with the hockey season because, as we said, we got to come back and talk about a lot of big decisions ahead. And we'll do that. We'll probably have some guests on, but let's just take a little break, everybody, and get back to our lives. The people that we love, who love us, and there are other things in life.
Yeah.
Let's keep that in mind.
You should go reintroduce yourself to your wife. Say, "Hi, I'm Artistry."
I'm just going to wake up my children and hold them right now.
Yeah, they don't want to see Dad.
Right,
they don't want to see Daddy in this state.
They don't want to see me. I'll wait till the morning. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us all season. Until next time, GTOG.